My name is Jean Boerenstein, and I'm the Advocacy Specialist at Rape Crisis Cape Town Trust. I will be moderating this webinar and really just act as a facilitator. We are going to today, for the next hour and a half, really talk about government's approach to gender-based violence and femicide, what the theory is, and how it works out in reality. I know that there are some members from civil society, but really this is a conversation focused really for government stakeholders and role players in the justice system. I see there's quite a lot of you as well, so especially welcome to you. I want to welcome one of our presenters, Minister J Jeffery, who is, as you know, the Deputy Minister of Justice. He has indicated that he is going to really talk about how the government thinks about gender-based violence and femicide, and then what the reality is that is experienced on the ground. We are waiting for our other presenter. She did indicate that she is trying to connect. So before or while we wait for her, I'm going to ask that you really participate in this conversation. We are not going to have long presentations. The bulk of the time will be really to hear your comments and questions. And the way that you can raise them is by using the chat function. So on Microsoft Teams, there is a little speech bubble. If you are connected on your phone, then you can just scroll to make the screen live. If you are using your laptop, it should be center bottom of your Microsoft Teams screen. And if you hover over the that button, you will see that it says meeting chat. So if you want to ask any questions or make any comments, please do so via the meeting chat. You will see that our host, Gbv Bills, who's the Regional Court President in Limpopo, has just posted a message in the chat. So if you want to make any comments or ask any questions, please just follow her example. I will keep an eye on the chat, and then I will relay the questions and comments to the presenters. Yaki, I just want to check if our other presenter managed to join. It doesn't seem like it. All right. Minister Jeffery, are you are connected, right?
I am, yeah. Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm connected. I did speak to Ms. Mbetshe, just at 2, and she said she was trying to connect with the link from the website. I've sent her another link, but you may, I don't know. The intention was that she would start. You may want to start with me then, and
yeah,
she comes in afterwards.
Yeah, I think we are going to have to do that. And Yaki, will you be able to liaise with her directly to just figure out what where the challenge with the connection is?
I will do so.
Thanks, Yaki. All right, so I want to hand over to you, Minister, and thank you for being available to do this. I know that this topic was actually suggested by you, and I think from the number of attendees, you can see that this is something that really interests people. I will be keeping an eye on the chat for questions and comments. But yeah, we are going to switch our program around a little bit. So you are welcome to start. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jean, and good afternoon to everybody. As Jean had said, I chose the topic, and I'll explain why. I was invited by Mrs. Vessels to speak at one of the webinars, and I could choose the topic. And I chose this topic of the state's approach to GBV, the theory and the reality, because on the one hand, there are wonderful laws in place. Provision of our constitution are so great, one of the most progressive in the world. Our laws are generally accepted as good. Yet we have one of the world's highest rates of gender-based violence. But also apart from that, it's also the experience, and that is what I think what Ms. Mbetshe was to speak on as well. The experience of users of the system is often quite different to what it should be. So on the one hand, we will talk whether it's officials from the department briefing the minister or myself, or briefing Parliament, and we'll talk about all the wonderful things that are happening and all the processes in place to assist people. But then the other side of it is the reality of people's experiences on the ground. And I didn't want this to be a sort of a lamentation session, a hand-wringing session, a complaint session, but actually to have an engagement on why is there such a difference between what should happen and what does happen. Ms. Mbetshe was to speak on her experiences with domestic violence applications. And that was particularly in the Cape Town area. Hopefully she will still do so, so I don't want to speak on that. But the complaints from the public about basically uncaring, I'll go into more details, uncaring officials, police officials, court officials during the lockdown, where access to courts was restricted or is restricted still. The issue of quotas being imposed. The general response is that there are from the department is denials of that. But the reality is that it is happening. The Deputy Minister in the Presidency, Deputy Minister Thembi Siweya, paid an unannounced visit to Randburg Magistrates Court on Monday, following complaints about the ill treatment of GBV victims on the presidential hotline. And she found slow-moving queues, preference being given to celebrities, and victims being turned away. According to a media article, an officer of the court came and handed out forms to all the women. She told them what they were expected to write on the forms and left without making sure all of them, including an elderly woman, understood what they were required to do. There was no interpreter to explain to those who would have a challenge filling out the forms, which are written in English. That's from the news report. Incidentally, there were, I have heard that some of the officials at Randburg were not happy. They felt they were being spoken down to. They were not happy with the bad publicity, but that's the reality. And when I read the article on Randburg, I had felt, well, it's not just Randburg, it's other places around the country as well. So that's really the issue I wanted to discuss. The point then, obviously, that I'm saying is that There is one narrative, which is the theory, which is what should be happening, what we're told is happening, and then there's the reality of what is actually happening and the experiences of people. And obviously, to say in South Africa, we have a serious problem of gender-based violence. Both gender-based violence and femicide are a violation of human rights. It's a health issue that's cuts across boundaries of economic, wealth, culture, religion, age, and sexual orientation. The frequency and the brutality of the violence and the lack of accountability and widespread impunity exhibited by perpetrators of violence against women and children, the secondary victimization at the hands of the police, the courts, and the criminal justice system, perceived to be favoring perpetrators of gender-based violence, led to the total shutdown protests demanding swift action from the state to end it. But we are often faced with a grim picture of a broken system, often failing to protect victims from their abusers. The legislation may be in place, but the criminal justice system has been called inadequate in responding to the crisis of rape, domestic violence, femicide, child homicide, and other related forms of gender-based violence in South Africa. And this failure is reflected in the low levels of reporting, secondary victimization, and worrying levels of impunity that embolden the abuse and violence that continue to be inflicted against survivors. Some of the experiences that people have had or have spoken about, I mean, we've had, this is particularly from Cape Town, complaints of, at one court, of officials being, of people applying for orders being turned away, being told to come, they were there on a Friday, being told to come back on a Monday because the people were too busy. When those were taken up, that was then denied by the officials. And that's generally the response I find from officials is, no, this is not happening. In Ms. Mbetshe's matter, which was relating to a quota being imposed, and again, as I said, I don't want to go too much into it in the hopes that she will talk about it, that was denied, but it really seemed as though there were quotas in place, and people were being told to go away and come back the next day. There was the situation of Aletia Courtier at the Belleville Magistrates Court early in the lockdown last year, who came to court to apply for a protection order, queued up to get into the court, got into the court, stayed for about an hour, and then left with the forms. The next day, I think it was, she and her daughter were killed, allegedly by the person who she was seeking the protection order against. I was so concerned with that I asked the public protector to investigate, not really trusting a departmental inquiry. The public protector investigated, found nobody responsible, that she wasn't turned away or anything. But the bottom line is that Ms. Courtier went to court seeking a protection order, went to the trouble of queuing and everything, went in, but for some reason left without getting the order. Whilst being Deputy Minister, I'm unfortunately not too in touch with what's happening on the ground, and that may be a problem. But I have still been wondering why she didn't get the order. The answer, to some extent, I found much later, which was that the forms are 7 pages in length, and they have to be completed in English. And I do wonder whether that is not possibly part of the answer as to why she didn't stay to complete the application form. So it's interesting that one can have official inquiries from the public protector, but the actual reason as to why things are not working is possibly still not discovered. But just to give some examples of the theory versus the reality, In terms of legislation, people can apply for protection orders. But as I've said, the protection order form, application form, is 7 pages long. It's only available in English, or it has to be completed in English. The reason for that, I would assume, is because English is the language of record of the courts. It's the one language that all the staff members, judicial officers understand, but it's not the most widely spoken language by far in South Africa. The application form for protection from harassment orders is even longer. Applicants are often sent from pillar to post, sent to one court, then told to go to another. That court is possibly closed because of COVID, a COVID infection that was there the day before. Are arrangements being made for alternative places for people to go to, because these protection orders are urgent. Applicants sometimes having to travel long distances and using public transport for that. Protection orders are granted but not enforced. Then there's the issue of the ability to report incidents of gender-based violence. Anyone can report a gender-based violent incident, but the problem that people often find at the police stations is that police officers are not properly trained or sensitized. The complainant is sometimes shamed or not taken seriously. The complainant is sometimes told to go and sort it out at home, and they sometimes have to report the incident in an open area with no privacy. These are issues that have been raised before. I've personally been at a meeting with the Minister of Police and new police graduates, where he told them that if they sent a woman home who was seeking a protection order, they were they could be sending her to her death. But in spite of that, the problems still continue. With the issue of sexual offences courts, we've got the theory of them. We've got the problem of often the physical infrastructure required is not available. The equipment, which is currently a very pertinent problem, equipment is not functioning or sometimes completely absent. Rape kits are not available. And then currently we're having a problem with delays in the DNA reports from the police. There's a right to have matters speedily investigated and trials to be speedily finalized. But the reality is often that matters are not properly investigated. Perpetrators who should not be out on bail get bail. Courts don't sit due to various reasons. The court recording technology machines not working. Other issues of availability of water and things like that at the court. And the DNA results backlog. And then with COVID, the problem of staff on rotation or absent due to COVID, or court closures due to COVID. Then there's a right to be protected from secondary trauma. Often psycho support services are not available. Interpreters are sometimes not available. The victim has to go back to court repeatedly. Presiding officers sometimes impose inappropriate sentences. For example, and it's not an isolated incident, compensation orders for a sexual offense. Also, just to highlight some other examples of the systemic failures, a report by the Western Cape Police Ombudsman on GBV found that 80%, so this is the Western Cape, 80% of victims were not interviewed in private. 60% of complainants and victims were not afforded an opportunity to offer information during the investigation or trial. 80% of victims were not informed of their rights to protection from any threat of harassment or intimidation. 60% of victims were not informed of available support services in their community, and none of the victims were told how to apply for monetary compensation when they'd suffered damages or financial loss. The report revealed that human and other resources to sustain the police victim empowerment program, which ensured victims received all the services, was lacking. And it recommended relationships needed to be established or existing ones strengthened with local NGOs that handle GBV cases. Some of the things we've been trying to do are the 3 GBV bills in Parliament. They are priority bills, but the legislative process takes time. Currently, the stage they're at is they've been considered by the NCOP Select Committee. They've been passed by the National Assembly. The NCOP Select Committee has finalised them. The Criminal Matters Bill is not being, there's no amendments proposed to it, but the other two bills, there are amendments proposed, and I think necessary amendments, and those two will then have to go back to the National Assembly to accept or reject those amendments. But some of the things there are trying to tighten up on the issue of the granting of bail, making sentences, tightening the sentencing regime, and so on. So, look, that was largely, I mean, I see in terms of the platform, it's a number of people from within the justice system, which I think is very useful. But the issue is, how do we, within the system, and then there's also people from civil society organizations. There are people I see from civil society organizations that were in the public service. But how do we change how do we deal with this problem of what should be happening and the fact that it then isn't happening? Sometimes it is human issues. You will get a number of officials who are very eager to go the extra mile to assist members of the public, whether those officials are court officials or prosecutors or judicial officers. But sometimes you will get people in all those categories who don't necessarily care, or on that particular day don't particularly care. So what do we do about that? How do we ensure that the system works better is the key question I really want to raise to everybody. How can we ensure that we don't have a disjuncture between what should be happening and what does happen? Thanks, Jean. I think let me leave it like that for now.
Thank you so much. I already see some questions and comments in the chat, but I think our other participant, Ms. Mbetshe, has also joined. I just want to make sure, Ms. Mbetshe, if you are indeed with us. If your mic is on mute, maybe just check that. Yaki, are you able to see?
I haven't been able to see her yet, but she says she's in. And she should be able to unmute her mic.
Ms. Mbetshe, I just want to check if you can hear us. All right. While we are trying to figure that out, that's very strange because I see that she's in the chat. So while she joins us in the room, I want to pose a first question, Minister. This was asked by Karen BC from Mosaic. an organization that you know works a lot with protection order applications for domestic violence. And she agrees that the form and the length of the form is often a contributory factor to why people don't apply for these orders, or maybe why they aren't granted. And she suggested a simplification of the application form. Do you think that's something that the department will consider in earnest?
Thanks, John. Yes, look, I think that it's a pity that this issue on the forms has had to come up from outside. That, I mean, one of my problems is, but why haven't officials in the department picked it up? Why haven't officials who are using the system picked it up? But very clearly, there needs to be, I mean, we've been speaking about online applications, but which obviously only then applies to a particular people who've got the skills to basically use them. So I think online is important, but definitely we've got to address the question of, and I see officials from the department are here. We have to address the issue of making the forms more user friendly. We have to address the issue of language. Yes, the presiding officer who's got to consider the matter, English may be the language that is sort of common, that they can that everybody understands, but we've got to look at ways of ensuring that people can tell their story in their own language and their own words. Basically, I mean, I think the issue of self-filling up the forms should be a option for those who want to, and we then need to make it as easy as possible, as user-friendly as possible. But we've also got to accept there's a large number of people who are not going to be able to fill up the form to account what is there, even in their own language, if it's not English. And so we've got to look at ways of ensuring that those people are assisted as well. So, you know, I see Mrs. Thomas has, sorry, I'm also looking at the chat, has talked about translators. I mean, there are interpreters. Those are mainly used within the court, but there needs to be access to interpreters. I mean, an interpreter also doesn't necessarily have to anymore be physically present. You can dial an interpreter, as it were, and get assistance if you're the clerk. But definitely there needs to be greater assistance, and definitely we need to, as the Department of Justice, reevaluate the forms and the processes followed in submitting them.
And then there's a question by I assume it's Anne Isaac, and she is asking what monitoring and accountability practices are in place to ensure service delivery at a high level. So I think she might be referring to something other than the reports to Parliament, which Minister, you've mentioned before, is something that that often sound incredibly wonderful, and we're meeting all of the targets, but that might not really be like that for people who have to access the services on a daily basis. So maybe you can just touch on that, and then Wilhelm, I see your comment. I'm going to bring up the issue of the police in a moment. Thank you.
John, thanks. I see Asanda is on my screen now as a presenter.
Yes.
So you may want to hand over to her so that she there she is, so that you finish the inputs and then one can continue with the discussion. So maybe if I can come back to that question later, if that's okay, sure. If Asanda is ready.
Thank you so much. I just switched from my chat to the participants. Ms. Mbetshe, I want to just test if we can hear you if you unmute your mic.
Yes, good afternoon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm very glad that you are able to join us. I know that you traveled yesterday, and I'm sure you are very tired, but thank you for making the time to share some of your experiences with us. We've had inputs from Deputy Minister already, but we are really looking forward to hearing your first-hand experience. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, and a good afternoon to everybody on the platform. Apologies for joining a bit late. Technology got me there for a moment. I'm going to give you a brief account of what has happened with my family. On the 31st of July, my sister was a victim of an incident of domestic violence, and it happened in a public place at a shopping mall. But she managed to escape and run home. So when she got home, we called the police. And when they got to our home, they said they had heard about the incident because the mall had reported it to the police station nearby. So they were very helpful. They advised us to go to the police station where the incident had happened, in the same area. One, to make a statement, but secondly, to go to court and apply for a protection order. That seemed easy enough. But when we went to the police station in the same area where the incident happened, first we get there and it's around 5 and there's going to be a change in shift. So there were delays around getting help there. When the next shift started, the police officer who attended to us was really reluctant to take our statement. He really tried to convince, or rather to talk us out of making that statement, saying that the case is not likely to go anywhere. Our best bet is to just go for a protection order. And we had to insist that, no, we would still want to make the statement and have the matter recorded by SAPS nonetheless. We insisted, so we got that. That was on Saturday. On Monday, we then went to, the police had said we can either go to Cape Town Regional Court or Bishop Levis. And I said to them, I don't know my way to Bishop Levis. So the nearest we know is Cape Town. Monday morning, we go to Cape Town. We get on the queue, and then when it's our turn, we're told, no, your area falls under Goodwood, so you must go to Goodwood. This is now after 11. We'd been there around 8 in the morning. So we get to Goodwood, and they say, no, domestic protection orders are not processed here. You must go to Bishop Levis. But the security guard says, hold on, let me just check for you. Let me just make sure. So she puts a call through to the court inside, and they tell her, yes, those people must go to Bishop Levis for a protection order. But Bishop Levis is closed today because there was a COVID case, so there's decontamination. So they must go on Tuesday. So that's Monday done. No assistance. Tuesday morning, we go to Bishop Levis. That's the 3rd. We got there between 22 and 7:45 in the morning. We get on the queue. Just as it approaches 8 o'clock, the security guard comes to say, we only take 15 people per day. The rest of you must go home, come back earlier tomorrow. Then everybody goes up in a fight to say, no. You can't tell us, it's not even 8 o'clock yet. You can't tell us you're only taking 15 people per day and we must go back. And people are like, we've traveled far to get here. You can't turn us away. And she says, no, that's it. And then we put up a fight. And I still raised the issue with her. I said, on Monday, this court was closed, so it didn't attend to anybody. On Tuesday, there's no adjustments to the quota for the day. It's still 15 per day and you go away. And we said, no, people were here on Monday and they were not attended to because the court was closed. It's now Tuesday and you're telling people who were here before 8 o'clock that they're past the number 15, they must go back it's not fair. And just as we were protesting about that, another woman comes behind us and she says, she pulls down the collar of her jersey and she shows deep red scars and she says, I can't go back to this. I can't. And she starts crying. And people show up behind her to say, no, we were here yesterday and we had to go back. You can't tell us we must go back home again. And we protest about this. So the security guard says, okay, let me go back inside, but I'm not promising you anything. So she goes, another gentleman comes back and he says the same thing, that we're only seeing 15 people per day. And we say, it makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. But then we insist we're not going. We say, no, we're not going. We've already lost, because it's a work day lost on Monday for people who are queuing there. And now people didn't go to work. They went there and they're being told to go back. And we said, no, we're not going. We're not going. You need to see what to do, but we're not going. And the woman behind us starts crying hysterically. And we said to her, no, we're going to wait. We're all going to wait together until somebody sees us. There's a register that had to be filled in. So people fill it in. And my sister and I were number 16 on the queue. So the cutoff starts from us to the rest. And we said, no, we're not going. We are not going to leave. The security guard leaves us and to go to the front of the queue to make sure to recount. And then in that recount, she comes back to say, no, only one person goes in. If you're accompanying somebody, don't put your name in, you go stand on the side. You're not going to be assisted. But we still insist, look, we can't go back because now Monday, we went between Cape Town and Goodwood. Tuesday, we're now at Bishop Levis and you're telling us to go back and come back tomorrow. So that's 2 days of work lost. That's 2 days of money spent in transport going between the courts. And you're saying to come back a third day. That's not right. That's not fair. We're not going. Other people gave up and left. We insisted on staying and eventually we were allowed to put, my sister was allowed to put her name on the register and be seen to. And in that moment when we were there, I started tweeting about the frustration of it all, that this is not right, this is not fair. How can you be sent from one court to the next and to the next? I'm like, this is the third court we're at, and we're being told to go home because there's a small number that will be taken on a day. And other people raise this issue. I'm like, but what does it mean for a victim, especially the woman who was behind us, who was saying she had been assaulted on Saturday by her partner, and she'd been staying with friends from Saturday evening, Sunday and Monday. She was there, and now it's Tuesday. She'd lost 3 days of work, and she was not going to be able to put off going back to work anymore. So different people also come up with their experiences. And since then, initially I thought this was a Bishop Levis court issue, until two women who are in the Eastern Cape in Gbv said they had the same problem at the New Law Court, where they were told they only take 20 people per day. And there's no more. If you're not in the first 20, go back home. And I complained about this. I was like, it's not fair. One, the hassle of being sent from one court to the next because there's no clarity on jurisdiction costs victims of gender-based violence a lot. It costs them money in terms of transport from our area, which is the Danone side, to Bishop Levis. It's 2 taxis to get there. If you count the 2 taxis on the Monday to get to Cape Town Court, to get to Goodwood, and then back home, that's another 2. So in terms of time, it's very time consuming. 2, it's expensive for victims to access justice. And I remember in my first interaction with the Deputy Minister, I still said, why is it that we had to go from our area past Goodwood Court and go to Bishop Levis Court when the courts are supposed to assist the public with access to justice? Why is it that jurisdiction is put in a way that you pass a court that can provide a service as a victim of gender-based violence, and you must go to a specific one in a further area, where you then get told, sorry, you're late, come back tomorrow. those are some of the things that I found very frustrating. And I still remember saying to my sister, you know what, we are lucky that we had a car to go from one court to the next and to the next one. What about somebody who doesn't have a car, who has to hop from one taxi to the next and to the next to get to the court, only to be told that they've not made the set number for the day, they must go back home? Go back home to what kind of environment? So those are some of the issues that I had raised, and I said there has to be a different approach. There has to be other ways to make access to justice better and more improved for people who need the service. I will never forget the woman who was crying behind me, saying, I've been living from friend to friend for 3 days. I need some form of protection so that even if he shows up there, I can call the police and they can know, and there's record of what he's done to me. So for me to be told to go back home now, I don't know what's going to happen to me. And those are some of the things that I believe government can do better. It has to do better. That's just some of our personal experience. And it was a very triggering experience, because in 2007, it was actually on the 9th of August in 2007, where I woke up to a message from my mother that my aunt had been stabbed 7 times by her partner. He never got arrested for that. Eventually, when he got jailed, it was for something else. When you see her, she still has a scar on her face from that incident. So when you think about what had happened to my aunt in 2007, and being sent from pillar to post in 2021 with my sister, I still said, this can't be right. There has to be a way to improve access to justice for victims of gender-based violence. And my strongest appeal to government and law enforcement agencies that it works with is there has to be better ways to do this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to just sympathize with how traumatic this experience must have been, especially because it triggered emotions from a previous experience. And I think that that you said it so well in the end, that it really is an access to justice issue. This is a human rights issue. It's not only a service delivery issue. It is about human rights. It's about human dignity. It's about our right to live free from violence. And I think your message really resonated with people who are attending this conversation. And that really raised questions about SAPs, about persons with disabilities. And I want to maybe just kick off with that and give you and the Deputy Minister an opportunity to respond. Someone raised the question of, or the issue with the statements that are taken down by SAPs.
Sorry, John, is it possible for me just to add on Asanda's, what Asanda has said?
Sure.
It was what I would have done if she had spoken first. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, just in addition from, I mean, I picked up the issue when Asanda was tweeting, or other people, I think, picked it up and referred it to me. The issues for me that are, well, the one issue which I mean, maybe just to give, and this is part of the issue we've got to address, the response from the department. So the first response was that no, there wasn't a quota of 15 per day. They were allowing 15 people in at a time. But look, Asanda was there, and you've heard her version. and the fact that this is coming up from other places. So I'm sorry, I believe Asanda, okay? But the response when confronted on it from the department is, no, they misunderstood. They misunderstood, it's 15 a day. However, as I said, this is not just the Bishop Lavis that is reporting it, and subsequently the acting regional head of the Western Cape has issued, because he also picked up that other courts were doing this. And part of one of the frustrations is, during the height of the lockdown when was it, March, April last year, the courts were kept open specifically for domestic violence and harassment applications. So this whole issue of the quota is something, it seems, just created by the local officials of, okay, well, we're busy, whatever, I don't know the reasons, we can only see 15 a day. Whereas the issue from us, from the ministry's side, is basically every person. So all the people that Asanda spoke about in the queue, every person needs to be seen that day. If the court is closed because of a COVID infection, and it does happen at the moment, then alternative arrangements need to be made for somewhere else for people to go to report those things. But I think the frustration for me, well, two issues. One, the frustration in terms of the response of the sort of knee-jerk defensive response of officials, some officials from the department. And then two, the other aspect which concerned me was the issue Asanda's already picked up on. Why did the police refer her sister to Cape Town, when Cape Town weren't going to hear the matter? I'm told that Goodwood doesn't have, because of space problems, a domestic violence section, that everybody does get referred to Bishop Lavis. But then why were they referred in Cape Town to Goodwood? Why couldn't the justice officials have checked that Goodwood? Don't tell somebody to go to Goodwood because they won't get help there, they don't have the facilities. So those are the sort of frustrations on the issue that I wanted to, or my frustrations that I wanted to add to Asanda's account. Thanks, John.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just raise a number of questions, and then I'm going and comments, and then I'm going to give our two presenters an opportunity to respond. Firstly, perhaps I've already mentioned the comment that was made about the simplification of application forms. Some attendees have raised issues with regards to the police. I think, Asanda, in your experience, obviously the police is at fault as well. And interestingly, last year on the 24th of September, during the first series of webinars hosted by Pillar 3 of the NSP Implementation Collaborative, I moderated a conversation with Major General Linda, who is the head of FCS units nationally. And we talked about people's experiences of reporting GBV matters to SAPS. And he outright said, people who are victims of gender-based violence should rather not report to SAPS, because he's aware of the attitude problems in his own teams. People should rather report to units like the TCCs and other designated units. And this is the question that I'm raising, is the reports to the department state that we have 55 TCCs. We are now going to get additional TCCs. But what it doesn't state is the amount of people who currently don't have access to such a service. People who, and I see you shaking your head, I know you traveled either to or from the Eastern Cape, Asanda. I've specifically heard that this is, for instance, an issue in Butterworth. There are many rural areas where people don't have access to comprehensive post-rape care services or a place where they are safe and supported and can report the matter and receive the medical care and the forensic care and psychosocial care that they need. So what I want to put on the table really is government's response to having post-rape care services for survivors across the country, and not just the lucky few who get to access a TCC. So I think that's something that I want to put to the minister. Asanda, I saw you nodded your head, so you might want to add. Then the issue of persons with disabilities have been raised by one of the attendees. I think whenever we talk about the services provided by the criminal justice system, this is something that comes up time and time again. I know that, for instance, the Sexual Offences Court regulations make provision for facilities that are accessible to people with disabilities, but maybe the Deputy Minister can address us with regards to how that is happening in the other courts as well. Then Lwandiso, who I know is with the Western Cape Regional Office, and who I have on, I upset probably once a month, has raised that Form 2, that is the application form, is available in all official languages, and that the court must just print the language that is used by the people who access that specific court. And I think what I'm interested in, I haven't worked on the DV courts recently. I want to ask, how do we make sure, that sounds like a simple plan, how do we make sure that that happens in each and every court? We've touched on the issue of online applications briefly. The minister mentioned that, and I think Yaki had a lot of input to getting the online application system off the ground. But is that something that is accessible to people across the country? Is that something that will really ensure access to justice, or does it impose a different sort of quota? Then Claudia Lopez from the Heinrich Böll Foundation has very kindly posted the National Shelter Move Line helpline number in the chat. And she's asked DM if it's possible to ensure that this number is available at every court that hears domestic violence protection applications, because this Asanda might have been an option for the very desperate women who stood behind you in the queue. And I think it's an excellent suggestion, Claudia. I hope that the powers that be can make it happen. Incidentally, she also mentions that quotas have been in place for a long time, even before COVID. She went with a friend to Wynberg Court and experienced a similar issue. And then someone, Deline Clark, hoping pronounced that correctly, says she is ashamed to hear of the lack of service and she's so sorry. Could a carrot and stick approach be followed? Could we ask the public to name and shame? She had a very positive report from Attridgeville Court where protection order and maintenance order was activated for one of the staff during lockdown 2 months ago. The police delivered a good service, etc. So it is possible. And I'm going to give an opportunity to our presenters to respond to that. Audrey, if it's possible to post your question in the chat, I'd really appreciate that. Over to Ms. Mbetshe and the Deputy Minister.
Asanda, do you want to go first, or?
Well, yes, let me. I absolutely agree with the suggestion that maybe online access could have helped, especially for the woman behind me who needed to get the paperwork done. Another issue that I would like to raise, I think it's for both the Department of Justice and SAPS to deal with. It's the lack of clarity on the process. In Cape Town, at the Cape Town court, we were told once we get the interim order, we would have to go to the home area of the perpetrator, go to the police station in their area, ask the police to accompany us to serve the papers there, to identify the person and serve them so that the law has proof that this person has been served. That's what we were told. But at Bishop Levis, once we were done with the paperwork, we were then told, no, don't worry about it. The court will see to it that the papers are served. And we started wondering, was it because we kicked up such a fight earlier in the day? Or does Cape Town have its own set of rules on how papers are served? Does Bishop Levis has its own set of rules? And any other court. I think there also needs to be a bit more clarity, maybe recurring training and alignment of what's policy and how it should be implemented, because it does give mixed messages. I remember the look of anxiety on my sister's face when we were told that we would have to go to the perpetrator's home with the police to identify him and serve papers. And I saw the relief later on when we were told, oh, it's fine, we'll get that. So there needs to be some clarity on how those things are done across the board, so that it's not just one court making its own rules as it goes along. That's it for me.
Thank you so much. Over to you.
Yeah, look, just in terms of responses, it may be, look, we Jean, we did speak about participation, but it may be useful for people in the system, I mean, to also give their views, but I know you're concerned about, I mean, you've got a wide range of people from regional court presidents to sheriffs, as far as the servicing of documents, to officials, and to civil society organizations, prosecutors, NPA, etc. I mean, for example, Mr. Kwabana, who's in the Western Cape regional office of the Department of Justice, I mean, has been making contributions to the chat in terms of availability of the forms in all languages, but it's not sort of happening. It would have been useful to have engaged more on issues there. But let me just say that you know, the theory and the practice, the theory or the legal reality, there are no quotas. and somebody from the department, judicial officers, staff, I mean, justice officials, I'm not aware of any provision enabling somebody to impose a quota. I think reference was made to this happening even before COVID, I think in Wynberg in Cape Town. With COVID, there have been restrictions on court services, but there's never been any quota imposed for domestic violence applications. Yes, during the height of COVID, the return dates, when you get the order, it's a temporary order and there's a return date when it will be made final. We felt that, look, that actually can wait. The person's got the order, they've got the protection. Any matter that has a return date during the lockdown should just be extended. So that can happen. But the right of the person or the need for the person seeking the order to be able to get access to the court to get an order, that's always been understood as fundamental. So it's this sort of emergence of quotas and gatekeeping and we can't afford to hear you, etc. Is something that seems to have come out inherently from, I think, officials mainly, in terms of, you know, it's a Monday, more people coming to court on a Monday because of things that happened over the weekend. Therefore, we think we can only see this number of people. So that's sort of one element. I think on the issue of the online applications, and look, we've got to accept that people are at different levels of education, different abilities to be able to express themselves, to understand what is needed to meet the requirements of an application. So one size doesn't fit all and shouldn't fit all. So a more educated person, and people need to be given the option as to what they want to do. A more educated person would probably prefer taking the forms and filling them up rather than having a clerk doing it. But a less educated person or a more traumatized person may need that support. When it comes to online, yes, it can't be online for everybody, but there would be people who would be able to use online, and that would then hopefully free up or make things easier for those who can't. So I think there needs to be a differential approach. The issue that's been raised is the thing of quite a bit, I think, in the chat is the issue of Asanda and her sister, well, due to, with respect to Asanda, to Ms. Mbetshe's profile, were able through social media to publicize what was happening. Most people don't have that. So what do we do? You know, this can't be an issue of the things happen on the ground, but they only will get picked up if it's somebody of some kind of standing, some person who's got some kind of voice. That is not correct. That cannot be correct. So we do have to look at how do we improve the situation for reporting complaints. Yes, there are there are toll-free numbers and so on, but that also then, I suppose, does require access to a phone. I think toll-frees are only are they not only free from a call box? Are they free from a cell phone? But we do need to look at significantly improving the accountability system where people can report. Because there's no use reporting if you've had a problem at a particular court. There's no use reporting to necessarily, well, not no use. Reporting to that court may not get the problem addressed because there's a tendency for people to want to protect each other. So I would highlight the need for accountability and systems of a systemic accountability as being very important. Obviously, civil society organizations particularly those that are based at the courts play a key role in that, but they're in very few courts because of resource constraints and things amongst the civil society organizations. So one can't have that as something that applies to everybody. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight those points. But Jean, also maybe and sorry we didn't discuss it before, maybe you may want to give some of the people working in the system an opportunity to make comments or to give suggestions.
Definitely. Thank you so much. There's a horrible echo. Okay, it stopped. I did, and I think we kind of discussed it before, but I did post my cell phone number, which is something those of you who know me personally that I'm very wary to do. But if there's anyone who feels like they want to give a suggestion, they want to make a contribution, but they don't want to do it on the platform, you are very welcome to send a WhatsApp to me on my cell phone number. You can see it in the chat. I do just want to point out, I would like to believe, Deputy Minister, that this was not intentional, that my question about the post-rape care services was not answered. So maybe just to flag that for the second round. I really want to invite people who work in courts, whether you are linked to the court and you're a sheriff, whether you are a clerk, a magistrate, a security guard, please share some of your suggestions. There's been some suggestions already, but I think you know best how those can be made real in your day-to-day lives. So it would be really great if you are able to share those suggestions either on the chat or, as I mentioned, you are welcome to contact me directly and I can relay them. I just want to point out, Advocate Kambula said that the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill, which is one of the 3 bills currently in the final process, seeks to introduce national directives for clerks of the court to ensure uniform administrative implementation of the Act, and hopefully that can help with monitoring of the administrative function of the court clerks. Then Corlia Cook just said thank you for everyone participating, and I want to really invite you, if you work in the courts in any capacity, to please post any suggestions. Or you're welcome to, as I said, you're welcome to contact me directly. The issue of the National Shelter Helpline, that's a suggestion that's been made by a member of civil society to get that number up at every court in the country. Deputy Minister, maybe I can ask you to comment on that, and then on the post-rape care services, something with a wider footprint to be able to serve all survivors.
Yeah, look, apologies for missing that issue. We had discussed it beforehand, and and I think that it is very important, and it's something that I think we need to be looking at. Obviously, justice sort of leading it, but it would, I think, also be what role is there for social workers from Department of Social Development? Can they do things on this? So I do think it's a very important issue. There needs to be post rape care services, and we need to then look at how we can achieve that. As far as the issue of, yes, I mean, well, definitely the minimum is to at least put up numbers in the courts, and those people who are here from courts themselves or from regional offices or from the national structure, we need to look at ensuring that happens. Mr. Kwababana, sorry, has, I see, sorry for taking over your function, put out the number and an email address for problems in the Western Cape to be reported. I think that's useful, but obviously a number of people don't have access to email, and that is a office line. So hopefully that line, but you can't send most people, I think, do have cell phones. You can't send you can't send a text message to an office line. But I think but the point I'm making is we need to look at improving the ways of accountability, the systems of accountability in each court. Where there's a problem, that you don't have to wait for an Asanda Mbetshe to come along, and be lucky to have an Asanda Mbetshe in the queue with you who's going to take it up. There's got to be a way of ordinary people being able to raise their issues, have their problems addressed without that. And we've got to definitely look at ways of improving that. We've got to look at ways of ensuring greater accountability.
Thank you so much. I want to, Luandiso, thank you so much for raising that. But I want to take it a step further. I don't know if there are people from the other regional offices, but I want to ask Luandiso if you would be able to commit to making sure that every court, at least in the Western Cape, has that complaint mechanism up at the court, as well as the contact number for the National Shelter Movement Helpline. I think that would be something that's really helpful, and maybe your counterparts in other regions can take that initiative as well. Please let me know in the chat. Then Advocate Kambula said that the department developed a national policy framework on reasonable accommodation measures last year to accommodate people with disabilities, and this is now being implemented in 75 sexual offences courts. And I think that's a really important step in the right direction. And maybe you can let us know, Advocate Kambula, what the next steps are. I know that there's a plan to designate just under 100 sexual offences courts in the near future. Will all of them be accommodating to persons with disabilities like the regulations specify? And what about courts that are not sexual offences courts, but that are still accessed by victims of gender-based violence? As the convener of Pillar 3, maybe you would like to give your input by unmuting your mic. But before you do that, I just want to give Asanda you an opportunity. Again, you've obviously also seen the comments and questions. Maybe there's something that you would like to add.
I saw the message from Longiso about the email where to send complaints for the Western Cape. What I'd like to request is that such information for other provinces be also made available. Like I mentioned in my initial comments, that I'd spoken to 2 women here in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth who'd also experienced a similar problem as we did on the quota per day. That was also in this month of August. So if information about where people in other provinces can go or whom they can contact when they experience such issues, if that information can be made available for all provinces, it would be great. That's just it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope that there are people from other regional offices. See, Tanya Prinsloo is asking, further discussing the rights of people with disabilities. I want to ask, while I give Advocate Kambula an opportunity to just tell us about the implementation of the accommodation standards more widely than the sexual offences courts. I want to ask that the people from the other regional offices please post in the chat if you have a similar complaint line. And I assume the fact that Lwandiso said noted means that by next week, Monday, when we go to any court in the Western Cape, Benjamin's email will be there, as well as the telephone number, as well as the National Shelter Movement Helpline. So I'm looking forward to a little road trip. Yeah, I want to give Advocate Kambula an opportunity to tell us about the department's plans to make the courts more accessible for people with disabilities. Advocate Kambula, are you able to unmute your mic?
Yes, thank you. And thanks colleagues, and thanks DM and all the panelists. Really appreciate the opportunity. You know, when you talk about clearing up the system of the victim, the secondary traumatization, it's a process. It's a process that we, as court officials, as the criminal justice system actors, and also as the court users, including then the people who are engaging with the criminal justice system, to take the responsibility of ensuring that we report where there is, as it has been done in this instance, we report non-compliance and behavior that actually contributes to traumatization. So we then, because the reason for that, it is because we are able then to put together interventions to address those situations, not always because we have seen them, but sometimes it is because of the reports that we are getting, so that we are able then to circumvent and to address those situations. So with this, then I believe that with the information, because I've been, I decided to take a pen and a paper so that I'm able then to record all these, and also to look at the meeting chat, to get all of those. Why? It is because the regulations, I mean, the the directives that we're in a process of developing will be helping us then to capture all of those and ensure that then we come up with a system that promotes accountability at the level of administration, and also put in place, those complaints mechanisms and so on, so that we have a uniform response to non-compliance throughout our courts, which of course will have to be communicated then to our clerks and so on, and make it visible at the courts as well, so that people do not ask, they actually see it. It's written there that should this happen, this is what you can do as the user of the services. So that's what then I would say that we're promising to do in terms of, because we saw it as a gap. If you look at the current legislation, that is the domestic violence is quite silent on that. So we need then to have those directives that are actually enforceable to a certain extent in terms of the labor law prescript. So now, moving then to the issue then of the disability, I think that, as I would say that as a country, we have actually lagged behind in terms of responding to the issues of and the needs of persons with disabilities. But then the department last year, as I said, that then developed the national policy framework, which is actually looking into establishing a disability-centric court system. So it's a policy that provides then the special or the support services for the different types of disability, because you cannot respond to them in the same manner. So we have done that. And before that, then we introduced a mini training mechanism that we were doing then for the courts, so as to sensitize them of the different needs then of the different disabilities that use our services. So but now we have taken it to that level now of putting together the national policy framework, and in this year, something that we have already done in Q1 was to establish, to convert, to develop the minimum standards from the national policy framework. And the reason for that, it is because of, you have this Mercedes-Benz, but now you are looking at the feasibility of implementing it. And you have to come up with a lesser version, the minimum standard, so as to ensure that we don't wait until we have enough budget. So we implement what is possibly what we can possibly implement. So the minimum standards then are looking into that. I can also say that then it's a document that has been put together with the disability organizations, so that we get from them and we respond to the challenges that they have been experiencing when they engage with our court system. So now, as I said, that for a start, this is our premise, so that we start with the sexual offences courts, because why? They are already crafted and in a victim-centric approach. So now is to putting in then, those support services now that are addressing the disabled court users. But then the plan is to ensure that then it covers all our courts. But of course, it cannot be done at a goal because of as you know, that we have been experiencing the deep budget cuts and the economic decline and so on. So we have to be sensitive to that and be realistic. So then we will be progressively implementing it, but starting then with the Sexual Offences Court, as I've said, and moving it as well also to domestic violence and end. So that's basically where we are in terms of that. And I would also like to say that, because I saw here that others are saying that, one of the delaying factors is the fact that we don't have them, the form 4s, we don't have them in different. No, we do have them, because that will be a violation of Form 2 that says that you explain the rights of the victim in the language of the choice of the victim and so on. So because of that, then we translated. They have been translated there for many years. So what it means is that it's probably a failure on our part of ensuring that they are quite available at every service point. So we will ensure that we upload them at in our website, because they are in Genie. They are already available for the courts, for the court clerks, and ensure that then there's a circular that actually sensitizes them that you need to ensure that they are available. So making maybe notices somewhere that says that if you need a Tswana one, if you need a Xhosa one, and so on, then it can be made available, at the request, so that it is printed from Genie. And also you can also access it from our website by if you want a Xhosa version, then you get it from our website. So we will do that. So it's something that I think that is a gap in the system that we need to quickly address, because it's already available. So I think that those are the ones that I would like then to say, unless there's anything else that we would like. But then I would also, now you said that I must also speak then as a convener for Pillar 3. For Pillar 3, we have already done our annual plan, but I think that this webinar will have to take us back to the drawing board and adding some of the indicators, to our annual plan, so that we address these issues. And as that structure, then we take then the monitoring and the oversight function on the department to ensure that it has delivered on the promises that it has made. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Advocate Kambula. I'm so glad that you mentioned the issue of a circular, because I received a message on WhatsApp suggesting that a circular be issued addressing the following issue. Firstly, the complaint number that should be displayed at the court, and the email address, that the number for the National Shelter Movement Helpline be displayed, that no quotas may be implemented by justice officials, and that no complainants may be sent to other courts if the court where they are have the jurisdiction to deal with their matter. And then, Advocate Kambula, like you mentioned, the fact that the application form for protection order is available in all 11 languages, and that this can be requested from the clerk, and obviously the clerk is then obliged to provide the form. So I think it might be quite a hefty circular.
May I just say just one thing, which I thought that I was going to say at the end, as my parting shot, that we really need women like Miss Mbetshe. We need them. And that is why UN introduced the global campaign of hashtag, it's hashtag choose to challenge. hashtag choose to challenge. So we need to take that approach, and so as to challenge everything that is not what is expected to be, anything that is actually encouraging gender inequality and GBVF at every service point in the system, so that then we are able to respond to those issues. We have to take that responsibility first as women. And I think that is exactly what she has done. And I was listening to her as she was actually relating the experience of a sister and other family members. So I'm encouraging all of us here at this platform, particularly women, that we will not experience any change unless we choose to challenge. So we should embark on that campaign and introduce it in our country at every service point, that people must begin to talk, and so as to bring a change. And I would also say that for us then as pillar 3, we need to go back to our annual plan and see as to how, because this campaign was introduced during this month, the Women's Month. So let's take it up and come up with interventions as to how do we encourage people to begin to challenge anything that is not according to the Constitution. That's what I wanted to say. So I really thank you for having come forward. We really appreciate that. So we need more and more of the Asanda Mbetshe, to come out. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Kambula. I want to echo that. And I'm going to end the conversation soon and thank our presenters. But I just I want to get some form of commitment on the circular that will be issued. I'm not sure if this has to be done by the regional offices or if this can be done by the national office. Deputy Minister.
It needs to be done. I'm not sure. I'm not involved in the administration, but it needs to be done, and I'll follow up that it does happen, because whilst the forms may be translated, as we've seen from Deputy Minister Siwea's visit to Randburg, they're not being given out. Yeah. Forms in Randburg seem to be English. Advocate Kambula says the circular will be issued by us at National Office. But Chair, I need to also leave for another meeting. I don't know if you're ending, but just maybe to highlight one aspect that was in the chat, and I don't know if we responded to it. I think it was Karen from Mosaic talking about, I'm trying to find it now, but talking about the problem being too much done at a provincial and national level and not at a local level. And I think that's something worth considering. And what I would say, I mean, to Karen is look, you're in an NGO working in many courts. Let's engage with local people about how to start piloting this at local courts, and we can see then if it can be rolled out.
Thank you so much. I am aware of the time. I am aware that we have run out of it. Thank you so much for the presenters, Deputy Minister and Ms. Mbetshe. I really think this was an incredibly valuable discussion for everyone who attended. I would also like to think that this will bring about some form of systemic change with the circular issued by the national, by the head office. Thank you so much, Advocate Kambula, for raising that issue. Thank you for the person who WhatsApped me to raise that suggestion. Thank you for everyone who participated in the chat, whether with comments or with questions. want to invite you to the next webinar hosted by Pillar 3, which will be in 2 weeks' time. And until then, please stay safe. If you're in Cape Town, please stay warm. And then we'll see each other again. I will definitely keep my eye on the courts to see if those numbers are put up in a public place. Thank you so much for everyone's participation. Bye.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you for the great facilitation.
Thanks,
Thank
Praise.
you. Bye.